that we have been learning and getting value in the past 20 days. you know, I want to appreciate you for staying tuned all the time, or every time we come, to push this value to you, because we believe that as much as we grow in our mind with our personal growth, is going to be a spillover to the growth of anything around us. Our goal is achievable if only we desire to grow, because your growth is what will attract your goal. Your version of you now might not be able to attract that goal until you grow. Nothing, the goal is unreached. So you need to grow so that you can attract your goal. Wealth is not pursued; it is attracted. It is attracted. You can't attract it. You must attract it. So that's the reason why in this wealth creation class we talk so much about information, more so business, because one of the key ways to creating wealth is entrepreneurship. So that's why we sometimes we center our conversation on entrepreneurship. It's not because we're only talking to business people alone, because a lot of people who are working under employment, they're entrepreneurs, because as long as far as they have understanding of entrepreneurship, if they bring the entrepreneurship mindset to their working place, they become an entrepreneur. So they take decisions just like the owner of the company. They think like an entrepreneur. They take decisions like an entrepreneur, and they begin to create wealth. So, but a lot of people are working just to be paid, just for salary, without understanding that you work to learn, not just to earn. So that's why we communicate this wisdom to you and bring this transformation to you. So trusting that it's going to bring value to your life and transform and change you. So I want to encourage you to subscribe, to like and share, invite your friends, invite your family. Once again, I'm going to say my name is James. Okay, so this is James TV, and on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to it so that you can get valuable content we are bringing forward to you. And yesterday I was talking about capital. What brought forth about that conversation of capital yesterday was, while censoring some the mindset of several entrepreneurs. A lot of them begin to talk so much about capital and the capital. Sometimes yesterday I had to we talked about the lies about capital. The lies you've been told about capital. Capital itself. Sometimes we have fixated our mind to think that all we ever need as a capital is just about money. It's just about the money. Money is not all about it. All it is required as a capital. There are several areas, the capital or other trends that really formulate capital. Like we talked yesterday, we talked about 5 levels of capital. We talked about the financial capital. We talked about the physical capital. We talked about knowledge capital, or let's say social capital. We talked about intellectual capital, and yes, we talk about skill capital here. The one that communicate your skill. So today we want to look at the alternative without you actually even um, having money. And okay, let me tell you a story. Somebody said something some times ago, and he was coming to real estate, and all he had was a skill to market, and eventually he rented a kiosk. And while in his kiosk, he spoke to some people, I'm into real estate, who are in land to sell. And while he spoke to those people, Alaji to be precise, and that man introduced him to another man, introduced him to the owner of a land that has almost about 50 acres. And when he introduced him to the man, he said, this man said he can sell land. And he introduced him. And the man committed 30 acres of his land to him. He said, you can sell, let's see what you can do. Okay, we hand over these 30 acres to you. Go and see what you can do with it. And that was how the man started. That was a capital in the hand of that man. He started the real estate with just integrity. Nothing. He had nothing. He lost his job. He had nothing. 2016, fast forward, last year, the man did 9 billion in revenue. He did 9 billion last year in revenue in his real estate. What about that? 2016, in retrospect, he started with nothing. He started with just integrity. So you can see, these are alternative to capital. All that you need is all that you need. You always think that what you need is money, financial capital. Yesterday I said capital wasn't of capital. Capital is a resource. That resource can be money, it can be your mental ability, it can be network, it can be, yes, your ability. So it can be asset as well. It can be your network, it can be your asset, it can be money, and it can be as well your mental ability, what you can do, and by which you deploy to generate wealth or to create wealth. You deploy them to create wealth. In the factors of production, we have the land, we have the labor, we have the human, you know, so we have all of these things. But capital, that's what we call it, human capital. We have the land capital. We have, you know, um, the all of the capital spread across in this area. So capital is the general factor in all of these things. They all equivalent to capital. Now, so yesterday we talked about all of that levels of capital. Today I want to let you understand the alternatives to capital. The first thing I will be talking about is there's one that is the first thing is about barter and exchange. Barter and exchange. I will work with you. Then by so doing, you put so in my business. By so doing, you give me so machine. By so doing, that's a barter and exchange. I have this. I will do this for you. You do that for me to get me going in my business. Just like this Igbo apprenticeship scheme. You see, somebody's gonna work for a boss for about 4, 5 years, 6, 7 years, and the boss will give him capital. Look at that. That is a barter and exchange. They work, spend their time, spend whatever they have to serve the boss, while in return the boss will give them capital to start their own business. So barter and exchange, that's an alternative. They didn't have a dime. They didn't start with a dime. They only, what they gave was a time. What they gave was their service to their boss. So barter and exchange. Another thing we can look at is we can be looking at sweat equity. And let's talk about sweat equity. Where through your time, through your effort, through your skill, you are working your own business. I mean, you are starting your business with sweat equity, or better still, you have a partner who is going to take equity from you. He knows how to market. He knows how to probably run a finances, that is financial transaction as an accountant. He has some skills that can help the business. He's bringing skills on board, which is a sweat equity, and you can give him 5%, you can give him 10%, and lots of that. So that's a capital on its own. Sweat equity is a capital. It might be from you, the owner. It might be from somebody that's coming to partner with you. It's giving what you don't have. That's sweat equity. So that's that about that. We can talk about also integrity. Integrity itself is a capital. I've spoken about it. I talked about somebody. Integrity is you postulating certain reputation that so many people feel they can trust you based on your reputation that's been postulated. You've shown somebody that I am trustworthy. I am trustworthy. For somebody to commit 30 acres of land to somebody, it means the man is working on the leverage of some social network. Some people that introduced him, but those that introduced him they've seen his integrity. So what he brought to the on board was integrity capital. That was what he brought. He had no money to go and secure land to sell it by himself. All he brought was integrity. So integrity itself is a capital. You show to somebody, I can help you sell your cars. Don't worry, I will help you sell your cars. I won't be a car dealer. I don't have a car of my own. I met somebody about 2 years ago, and he came to me for some counsel and lots of that. And I asked him what he does, car dealing, car dealership. That's what he does. Big time at the Keja there. In the course of my car, he discovered the guy doesn't own one car. And he has the less set of G-Wagon, Mercedes, different, classical cars in his parking lot there. Or, yes, in his place. And he has all those fantastic cars. And I said, how do you do it? He said, because they trust me. They know I will not run with their money. You can see, that's why somebody like that will say, I'm a car dealer. You will think, oh, this guy has so much money to start selling cars and lots of that. See, what took Cosmos Maduka to the level where he is it was this integrity, alternative to capital. They begin to show integrity to Japanese company, to Chinese company, and they begin to trust him. And selling him cars, it will sell, it will send money to them. It will sell, it will send money to them. And that's when they can trust you with credit. Because you have postulated a certain reputation that makes them to trust you. No, don't be like somebody that his sister was trying to really set him up to be helping her to sell cars, tested him with the clothes and some computer appliances, and he failed the test. He spent, after sold the clothes and some stuff, he couldn't. The woman said, okay, let's have an account, come and give us the account report on how much you have done, and he could not come up with anything. And the woman had to halt his interest in the dealership with the man. So that is what happens. Integrity. So another one we can talk about is idea. Idea itself is a capital. When you have the ability to, intellectual ability to come up with idea, and which you can convert to value, to a product that people are willing to pay for. A certain idea that people are willing to pay for. I haven't tested the market, I haven't tested it to ensure that people are willing to pay for. People can invest in it. That itself can generate the capital. Idea is a form of capital. You have an idea. That's why a lot of people, because you're not talking to the right people, you think, oh, sometimes when we talk to people about stuff like this, they say, you know how much idea I have. I know how much. I was speaking in a place some weeks ago, and the man said, I'm guilty of what he was talking about, because I was talking about idea, creativity, innovation. And the man said, you know how much of the ideas I've created. I have all of them written down in my manuscript. But I've not tested everything, and I've not taken anything to the market. I've not. So the first thing that comes to our mind is the money, financial, monetization, or better still, to fund to run the idea. But a lot of alternative to capital. Okay, we'll talk more about that in the next one. Okay, let me talk about the next one. It will give you idea of how to raise money for the idea, just like what Elon Musk did, which is called the crowdfunding. So crowdfunding, that is you showcasing your products. You showcasing your product before production, and you showcasing your product, and people buying into it, paying for a product before production. Okay, let's talk about Elon Musk started the sport car, with Tesla, and you know what they did? They created a prototype and showed the features and the designs, and they invited wealthy people to come into such banquet, such exhibition, and they told them, look at the features, look at what it does, and like that. We need about certain numbers of people who can pay $100,000 within the next 24 hours. They will get their car, and in 24 hours, it got people to see the prototype of what the design of the car he wanted to do. They've not gone into production. He was able to raise $10 million within a week, and that was what he used to produce the car, and they sold to them. And when he now moved to the next phase, he went to sell to the general public. Initially called the wealthy, he wanted to sell to the general public. He used the same crowdfunding to produce a mass production, and he was able to raise $500 billion for a lot of people who are paid in advance. Some did not get their car even in 2 years. Some did not get their car even after a year, and then they paid. So crowdfunding, that was how Elon Musk, Tesla, rose today, and we are celebrating him today. The man used, not because the man has all the money, the man used the crowdfunding to fund his idea. He used the crowdfunding to fund his idea. So we see it's an alternative to capital. You think, oh, I don't have money, I don't have this, you're so fixated on what you don't have, forgetting what you have. The sweat capital, the skill, the boldness. The next one, let me talk about that. I want to talk about courage. It's an alternative to capital as well. Courage. A lot of business people, entrepreneurs, they are not starting out because they are timid. They are they are fearful. What about if I fail? What about if it does not work? What about this? What about that? There is lion in the street. So that's like the Bible will call it. See, courage itself, ability to stand forth and start itself is a big capital. Courage to step out. The wealthy people are not wealthy because they have all of the answers to all that they were doing, or they had all of the money, but they were courageous enough to start. They've taken calculated risk. They were bold enough. They have self-confidence to take a bold step. If I fail, I fail. See, let me tell you, it is better you start out and fail than to not start at all. So, myself and some folks, we came up with an idea some about a year ago, and we were coming up with a certain idea, to very fantastic idea that's going to be a very new idea in this country, to generate and run some equipment and certain production or something. I'm not going into details of it. So we started the company. A lot of us, quite numbers of us, almost about 20 of us. We came and began to we sold our shares amongst ourselves, started the company, built the company. I mean, we begin to design everything we need to about the company and launch that. But guess what? We had several meetings upon meetings upon meetings. I told these people, how long are we continuing to have meetings? When are we going to start this product? When will we start getting contracts? When are we? They say until everything is right, until we get this machine, until we get that machine, we have to import this machine from China, we have to go and get this one. See, forget about whatever way we can start. Let's start, get contracts, build up from there. And people begin to, we begin to sell shares to people. And they are buying into what we're doing, and investors were coming in, to use that word. Investors were coming in. But till date, we've never started. We've got a fantastic office, but yet never started one thing. See, that's what it was. That's what it is. See, courage to start. They want a perfect condition. I'm tired of all of those stuff. That's why sometimes starting business with multiple numbers of people is almost terrible, because there's this bureaucratic, ideology that is involved in when you and too many people start a business. This one you are saying this go, this one saying come, say go, this one say come, so that's courage to start. Okay, the last one I'm talking about today is partnership. Partnership. You partnering with people that have resources that you don't have. You have the skill, they have the money. You have the money, they have the skill. So that's partnership. That's partnership. So you are partnering with people of like minds, but each individual are coming with different things, bringing different things, complementary, efforts to the table. This complements this person complements, not the one that you are pushing, the other person is drawing back. So in partnership, there's a lot. In fact, I'm going to take up a video before the end of this 30 days. So we'll talk about partnership, because partnership is a way to go in this generation. That's new form of competition is partnership, collaboration. Collaboration is key. So we need to understand that part. What you need to do, you need to understand what you need to do. You need to understand what you need to do before you partner. What are the agreements you need to come to the table. They have certain principles that govern or guide your partnership deeds and lots of that. So you need to understand that partnership is another way to go. Partner with people, collaborate. Collaboration has to do with two companies coming together. Partnership has to do with two individuals coming together. Collaborate. You and your company as well as company can come together. You are into real estate together. You can buy some land together, sell together. You are in the same areas of business. Collaborate together, buy, import together, and sell together. So collaboration. These are alternative to capital that we are talking about. So all of these things, note them down, implement them in your business, and believe that you can learn from all of these things to start or to scale your business. To start or to scale your business. Sometimes you don't need to go to bank to go and get a loan and lack of that. You can take advantage of this wisdom to appropriate them and move forward in your business. So that's all I have for you today. So tomorrow I'll be talking about you as the first asset to your business and how you can get investors, you know, reaching out to investors. So that's what we're talking about tomorrow. All right, same time, 9 o'clock. See you tomorrow. All right, stay blessed.